Alright, what's going on, guys? Today, I want to talk about challenger decks, specifically modern challenger decks. Now, modern challenger decks aren't a thing that exists at the moment, but I'm here today to show you how Wizards of the Coast could go about making cheap, affordable modern decks that will likely sell much in the same way that these standard challenger decks did, which is to say, very, very well. Just cheap, affordable, budget decks stuffed in a box, not the tier 1 decks, but good enough for Friday Night Magic. It might seem improbable, but I think it can be done. Now, the first concern people may have is that, as many people believe, Wizards of the Coast doesn't profit from Modern, because most of the buying and selling happens on the secondary market. Well, I'd like to point out that the reason that is because Wizards of the Coast doesn't offer many sealed products for the format. Obviously, they aren't going to make money from the format if they aren't producing products for the format. The first couple master sets were tremendously successful, and it proved that Wizards could indeed make a profit from Modern if they offered a product for the format. The same could be true for challenger decks. The second concern might be that it wouldn't be good for Wizards of the Coast to release a one-time product that would allow people to make a single purchase and then never buy another product again. All you have to do is buy a modern challenger deck and you're good forever. Well, first off, there are currently something like 25 to 30 plus viable modern decks for competitive Magic the Gathering events. I mean, Modern is super diverse right now, so yeah, there's plenty of decks to be made. So if Wizards of the Coast released these in batches of, let's say, 4 or 5, it could take them 5 to 7 years to work their way through all the decks that are currently available in Modern. 5 to 7 years of consistent, regular profit is pretty good. That's not bad. So yeah, you know, the idea is, sure, someone could go buy a single deck and never buy one again, but I think we can all pretty much agree that if modern decks were stuffed into a box for $30, people are going to buy them when they hit the shelves. So once a year, you can release a batch of modern challenger decks, and for at least 5 to 7 years have a very, very good profit. And in that time, who knows how many new modern decks will come out? It's an ever-shifting format. You know, currently right now, as I'm speaking, Hollow 1 and 5-color humans are very popular all of a sudden. So that's perfectly possible. You know, you expect 5 to 7 years from now that there will probably be, there would have to be at least 5 to 10 new decks that would be, you know, popular by then, assuming that the whole format doesn't shift by then. You know, 5 to 7 years is a long time. So yeah, you've got plenty of room for profit there, guys. Not crazy. And as for allowing people to spend $30 on a single deck, you know, sure, but if these decks were released 4 or 5 per year, I would say that it's probably likely that people will buy multiple decks with each batch. I mean, I've seen people buy all 4 copies of the standard decks, and those are rotating soon. It wouldn't surprise me at all for people to try to buy all 4 or 5 decks with every single round that these come out, so I don't really see that as being a big issue, really. And it's definitely going to be true if they contain more value than their MSRP price. Much like the standard version, if you do that with modern decks, for sure, people will buy them. And if the standard challenger decks were any indication, people will have a blast playing them, upgrading them, and customizing them. One final point that I want to make before we move on is that if people are playing Modern, then people are playing Modern. It's that simple. As the kids say, it is what it is. And people will continue to play it regardless. The people who are playing Modern are going to be playing Modern. It's Wizards of the Coast's choice whether they want to make a profit off them or if they want to allow those people to continue spending money in the secondary market. And yes, I know, in this fantasy land, we'd like to convert them all to standard, so Wizards of the Coast could make all the monies, but realistically, modern players are going to be modern players. You might as well try to make a profit off of them. You know, it kind of reminds me of the concept of people going into a local gaming store to draft a private cube. Technically, you know, like the gaming store wants people to come in and buy stuff. They want them to, you know, buy a standard deck, play standard, play FNM. So when somebody comes in and drafts a cube that they made with their friends and just uses your tables, you know, you could complain and kick them out. But at the end of the day, they're still going to be drafting the cube. The question is, are they going to draft it in your store or are they going to draft it at their house? The benefit of getting them in your store is that maybe you sell a couple packs to them. Maybe they buy a soda. Maybe you use that opportunity to make a sales pitch for the Friday Night Magic event happening later on in the day, right? Like, so long as they're in the store, that's good for business because, at least they're surrounded by the stuff you're selling and they're going to be drafting the cube no matter what. So you might as well, at least, hey man, come and use my tables and maybe you can sell stuff to them. You got to get them in the doors first. That's the first step to getting them to buy that standard deck. So yeah, look, people who are playing Modern are going to be playing Modern. That's just how it is. You can choose to make a profit off of them and get them into the stores to play FNM, or you can just choose to ignore them and they will continue to spend their money in the secondary market, in which case, yes, you're not making any money from it, but that's your choice. You're choosing whether you want to make money from it or not. Currently, Wizards of the Coast is choosing not to. So with all of that said, we have one final thing to talk about. How do you make a Modern deck playable with a $30 price tag? That seems like a monumental task and probably impossible, am I right? I mean, generally speaking, a budget deck in Modern has to be like $100 minimum, and it generally needs to be in the $200 to $250 range to be remotely competitive. Well, remember, if these were like standard challenger decks, they should contain at least $70 to $80 worth of cards, and at that price, it might be possible. So just as an example, let's take a look at, let's say Affinity. So Affinity is a deck that typically costs about $750 to $900 USD, depending on the build. However, $600 of that comes from two cards, Arcbound Ravager and Mox Opal. The Arcbound Ravagers are $45 to $50 or so each, and the Moxes are $100 each. So collectively, it's about $600 worth of cards, close to $200 for the Ravagers and $400 for the Moxes. Now these pieces are important for Affinity, but at a local gaming store's Friday Night Magic, can you get away without them? Possibly. Some of the other big money cards are Steel Overseer, Blinkmoth Nexus, and Inkmoth Nexus, which collectively amount to about $160 or so. However, if we cut the Inkmoth Nexuses and cut the Steel Overseer down to a single copy and offer maybe 2 to 3 Blinkmoth Nexuses, these can be the big money cards that encourage people to buy the deck, kind of like Hazoret and Chandra in the red standard deck, or Walking Ballista and Fatal Push in the Counter Surge deck. Basically, these are the things that are like, holy crap, it's a $30 deck with Steel Overseer in it, right? That's the idea. So after that, the deck pretty much remains untouched. 4 copies of Midnight, Ornithopter, Volt Scourge, and Signal Pest, as well as Cranial Plating, as the core of the Affinity aggro package that only amounts to about $10 to $15 or so. 4 copies of Master of Ethereum adds $20 or so to the price. A single Etched Champion, maybe 2, that'll add another few dollars. And then we can round out the deck with some bulk, things like Springleaf Drum, Frogmite, Thoughtcast, maybe a Welding Jar or 2. We can even give the player some decent lands, 4 Darksteel Citadels, maybe 3 to 4 Spire of Industries, maybe an Inventor's Fair. And what we have now is a deck that costs, it's close to $100 or so. It's in no way a tier 1 Affinity deck. This deck will not win a Grand Prix or a Pro Tour. It will, however, be somewhat competitive at a Friday Night Magic event, and if stuffed into a box with an MSRP of $30, will absolutely sell. No question. You get to make money off people who you aren't making money off of, and you get to draw people into the stores with Modern decks that they can purchase and play out of the box, which is a crazy concept, I know. If Wizards of the Coast could do this with, let's say, 4 decks per year, once per year, releasing a batch of Modern Challenger decks, each batch featuring a variety of colors and playstyles, then I have to imagine that the product would be successful and probably stimulate the market as well, because after buying this deck, people are going to want extra copies of Steel Overseer and Blink Moth Nexus for sure, and some people may even spring for those Mox Opals and Arcbound Ravagers, but you have to get them in the door first. Just like those Cube players who aren't wanting to spend money but do want to draft Cube, you gotta get them in the store. You're not going to make money off of modern players until you decide to make money off of modern players. This is one way to do it, because you are not making money off of people who play modern at the kitchen table. Doesn't happen. You make zero profit from those players. Here's an opportunity to not only make money from them, but get them into their local gaming store. And then maybe you can convert them to standard, but you gotta get them in the doors first, Wizards. And this is a good way to go about it. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one.